Hello there, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Bright Ideas Podcast. As always, I am your host, Trent Deersmid, and we're here to talk about e-commerce. In fact, my goal with each and every episode is to shine a light on all the tools, the tactics, and the strategies that have proven to be the most effective by today's leading entrepreneurs. And on this very episode, you can expect some really good stuff because my good friend Bill is my guest today, and Bill is the CEO and founder of a company by the name of Elements Brands, which he is building or has built already and continues to build into an extremely successful organization using the acquisition model. But I'm not going to steal Bill's thunder. Let's hear it from him. Bill, thank you very much for making some time to come and be on the show.
Sure thing, bud. Glad to be here.
So in your own words, who are you and what do you do?
Yeah. So my name is Bill D'Alessandro. I am the founder and CEO of Elements Brands. And Elements Brands is a long-term home for consumer products brands. So we acquire companies and help them to scale and reach their full potential. So we focus on three specific industries. One is personal care, so think lotions and potions. One is household goods, soaps, things you use around the house, and pet products. Everything from supplements to topicals, but no food. So we look for great entrepreneurs who started really awesome brands, but have kind of hit a glass ceiling and don't know how to make them any bigger and want to kind of turn the reins over to someone else. So we acquire those brands and aim to hold them forever. So we hope to build a large kind of Berkshire Hathaway style conglomerate of consumer products brands and provide a great home for these products for the long term.
All right. And there's a whole bunch of stuff that I want to dive in deeper. And actually something I just remembered that I'm going to type in my notes so I don't forget about it is the Shopify Warehouse announcement, because I know that that happened after we did our pre-interview.
Yep.
All right. Because I definitely want to get your take on that. Okay. So at some point in time, you didn't do this. So how did you get started? Did you just sit down and think, hey, I'm gonna be Warren Buffett Jr. and build myself a conglomerate, or did it start in a different way?
Well, I hate to be so stereotypical, but I read the 4-Hour Workweek and quit my job. It was I was working in investment banking and finance. Worked for a couple of years in finance after I graduated from college, and the particular group that I worked in was called Sell-Side M&A. So we helped entrepreneurs to sell their businesses. So we sold, a bunch of businesses for other folks. And I remember always being so impressed with the entrepreneurs. And all of us in the investment bank were walking around in fancy suits thinking we were cool. And the entrepreneur was taking home 95% of the proceeds for the transaction. And a lot of these guys would show up to the management presentations in camo pants. And, I wanted their life rather than the investment banker's life.
You mean they had flip-flops?
They did. They did. Yeah. So I did that for a number of years, and I read the 4-Hour Workweek while I was doing that. And I thought, man, I think I can do this. So I started my first brand, Nights and Weekends, while I was working banking. And I quit my job when I was about $150,000 in sales. And that was
started your first brand. You didn't buy the first one. You started.
Correct. I started my first brand in 2010, and by 2012, I was about $150,000 in sales. I quit my job. I did the 4-Hour Workweek thing. I skied on Tuesdays. I traveled around. I ran the whole thing from my laptop. It was super cool. Felt really smug. And did that for a little while, but what I realized was there's an opportunity to do something that was a lot bigger, rather than just build a business that was, an internet cash flow machine, essentially. There's an opportunity to go out and find these other brands and bolt them onto the systems that I had already built for one brand.
And was this a consumer goods brand?
It was. It's a personal care brand. It's a skin cream.
Okay. So $150,000 in sales, you probably got 80 or 90% gross margins on skincare, I'm guessing. And so you were able to make an average living off of that, right?
Yeah, I was making $50,000 a year in profit. That was my number to quit, was when I made $50,000 a year in profit, I could quit.
Okay. So at some point in your journey, you decide, hey, I don't want to start more brands, but I want more brands. what was happening? What were you reading? Or did you have an aha moment? Like, how did you shift in your head from, hey, I'm growing this company to, oh, hold on a second. I need to do something slightly different. I need to change my strategy and grow a multiple brand organization.
Yeah, for me, it was, I actually went to school for computer science back in the day. So I'm a nerd at heart. And for me, it started sort of in the systems that I was building for my first brand. I realized that I'd built, and this was in 2011. So, Shopify wasn't what it was, and all e-commerce software in general wasn't what it is today.
Mm-hmm.
But I built a lot of software that allowed me to really automate my business. And I felt like, man, I'm only doing barely 6 figures in sales, and this software can support millions in sales. And I thought, man, wouldn't it be great if I had some more revenue? And I looked around, I saw all these businesses that really could use my software. And one way of thinking would be, man, maybe I should productize this software and sell to them. But I had just come from this world of finance, so I knew that businesses could be bought and sold, and just how much value could be created by implementing best practices at a business that you bought and owned. And then instead of getting, $199 a month, you can participate in all of the synergies and enterprise value you create by running a business better. So I said, I wonder if there are other companies out there I can buy and bolt on to my platform and use my software to help run. And that's when I started poking around and realized there was an opportunity to buy other brands.
And what did your software do, just for perspective?
It was basically middleware. So I was using a cart called FoxyCart at the time,
yep.
Which actually still exists. And I was using a 3PL, but there wasn't good software to kind of send orders from my cart to my 3PL. So I had fully automated that. I'd also fully automated all the tracking numbers back from the 3PL via API into the cart. I had written an inventory management software to kind of track my weekly sales, and I had programmed it in with kind of how much inventory I had, which it was pulling from the 3PL, and also the lead times from my manufacturer. So it was automatically reordering from my manufacturer based on a margin of safety to make sure I never ran out of inventory and with the shipping address of the 3PL. So I had automated a lot of stuff, and then I had a number of different metrics kind of on the back end that were being pulled automatically. And I was really not spending a lot of time doing the mechanics of the business. I was really working, on the business rather than in the business, to use a colloquial phrase. So I said, man, I bet a lot of other e-commerce businesses are wasting a lot of time doing all these things manually.
Mm-hmm.
What if I went out and bought them? So I did.
Nice. So buying an e-commerce business sounds easy to do. I'm guessing it's not quite so easy as it sounds.
Not quite so easy. It's gotten easier. We've done 6 acquisitions since our first deal was in 2013. It's now 2019. 6 deals later, we've gotten a lot better at it. But it is still, to use a friend of mine's term, like eating glass every day. So we looked at last year almost 250 deals. And
now, when you say, sorry, let me interrupt you. When you say looked at, do you mean that you got a deal book and you looked at the financials, or you looked at that many listings and then some of those listings you got a deal book and some of those you went down the
signed an NDA for almost 250 deals.
Damn.
So received proprietary information on almost 250 deals. So beyond just what's listed with the broker.
Okay. So that is sounds to me like very much a full-time job, and that's probably are you the one that is undertaking the vast majority of that effort?
Used to be. We have a full-time corp dev guy now who leads that effort for us, but he just joined us in 2018. So from 2012 to 2018, I ran that whole process.
So you're signing an NDA, about 1.2 NDAs a day. You're signing an NDA almost every
250 over 365 days. So it's about every 1.5 days.
Well, yeah, but I'm not counting weekends.
Oh, not counting weekends. Fair enough.
Yeah.
It's almost exactly 1-to-1. Yeah.
So where does one get that much deal flow?
If I told you everything, those would be all of my secrets.
That's true. Don't disclose any of your secrets.
But I will, of course, share some things that would be helpful to folks who want to buy an e-commerce business. There are a lot of brokers out there. A broker for a business is like a real estate agent for a house. You want to sell your house, you hire a realtor. You want to sell your business, you hire a business broker.
Okay.
There are a number of these brokers out there, and they all have email lists that you can get on. So every time they have a business for sale, they will blast it out. So you can take a look at them. There is a website, I think, that aggregates all of them called Centurica. And then you can also go to bizbuysell.com. And just with those two, they're not super organized, but if you want to put in the elbow grease, you can see a lot of deals.
Yep. Okay. So has it been pretty much like one acquisition a year, or did a number happen sort of quick in the beginning and now they're getting slower, or were they slow in the beginning and now it's speeding up?
It's pretty much very consistently one per year on average. Yeah. Okay. So first deal in 2013, it's now 2019, and we've done 6.
Okay. So the very first takeaway that I'd like the audience to have is calculate Bill's success rate. One deal per 250 NDAs. So many times people get into, and I know that in my business, which, and my number is actually a little better than yours. So my business is different than yours. My business, I negotiate with brands to become ideally their exclusive seller on the Amazon platform. And man, oh man, we kiss a lot of frogs. We do a lot of emails, a lot of phone calls, and our success rate is about 1%-ish. But yours is less than a half.
Yep.
Less than a half.
Yeah. Now, we also kiss a lot of frogs too. And sometimes we're looking around, we're saying, oh, that's interesting. We've seen a few other businesses like this, and we're trying to develop a thesis for a particular space. Or sometimes we're just interested.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it depends on how picky you're being too. We're very picky. I really want to get it right. And the numbers are getting big at this point, so I can't screw it up.
Yeah. What are some of the most, when you're looking at a deal, what are some of the most common red flags that would cause you to go, oh no, that one's not going to be a fit? Without disclosing any of your proprietary secrets.
Sure. And these filters are our filters. Other people might have different ones. So I hope folks listening don't think that if your business fits the criteria I'm about to mention, that you have a bad business. You just have a business that, isn't in our wheelhouse. So one thing that we look for is at least 50% of revenue outside of Amazon.com.
Which is going to be really hard to find.
So that thins it out a fair bit. And the reason for that is because I believe pretty strongly that if you can demonstrate that your consumers will come to your website and buy directly from you, which is objectively harder than buying from Amazon.com, right? And you probably ship it slower than Amazon does. It means that they are really picking up when you're putting down. Like they really are bought into your brand story. They want to have a direct interaction with the brand. And then it probably also means that you're a pretty good marketer. And that you're probably pretty good either from an SEO perspective or a paid Facebook and Google traffic perspective, and that you're able to attract traffic from a diversity of sources rather than just Amazon ads or ranking on the Amazon platform. Because in a business that's all Amazon is a risky business, right? The Amazon algorithm changes, or you get suspended, or you get a black hat competitor that's doing non-TOS compliant things and gets your listing taken down. Poof, your business is gone overnight. So we like to see that diversity of revenue source. Okay. So that's one thing we look for pretty uncompromisingly. So we already mentioned our industry focus, personal care, household goods, and pet. So we're looking for products that are generally consumable, lifetime value type products where the customers come back and buy again and again. That allows us to spend more upfront to acquire a customer because we know that you're not just going to buy one time. We also use a couple other metrics, one that we call revenue complexity. We like to see revenue non-complex businesses. And the way we measure that is total revenue divided by number of SKUs. We like to see, all else being equal, we'd like to see a tight SKU lineup that really flies rather than, a huge long tail of all sorts of things. And the reason for that is supply chain complexity, but also the amount of inventory you have to carry. When stuff turns slower, you got to carry more inventory.
Yeah. And then there's just more capital tied up in inventory, and you need a bigger warehouse, and your rent costs go up, and there's just a spiraling effect.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay.
And that's, we've learned that one the hard way with some businesses that had a ton of SKUs and caused us a lot of heartburn. We also look at a metric called revenue density, which is essentially how many dollars of revenue per ounce do you get? And this is really critical in e-commerce because things that are large, heavy, and cheap will bankrupt you in e-commerce, versus things that are small, light, and expensive are really where the money is, especially when free shipping is table stakes. So something like a bag of dog food, which is relatively cheap and extremely heavy and large, would score very poorly on this metric, whereas something like, a 1 ounce jar of $50 skin cream would score very highly on this metric.
And when you say score, do you mean that you've actually developed a matrix either in a spreadsheet or something like that where you're looking at each deal and you're assigning a score, which is somewhat objective or subjective? Subjective, right?
Objective, meaning based on data. Yeah.
So subjective, well, okay, yeah. So you're using these based on data to score, and then your calculator is coming up with a score total for you?
Yeah. So we'll have like dollars per ounce. Like we'll blend it across there. We'll dollar cost average across all their inventory and say, typically these guys get, $2 per ounce of revenue. When you think about it, that means a product that weighs 1 pound, 16 ounces, should cost $32.
And are you, to arrive at that number, are you simply looking at their price list and going, okay, simplicity, they have 10 products, their average price of those products is whatever, and here's all the weights of those products, so their average weight is whatever, and then it's the the $8 divided, so the average price divided by the average weight?
I do it the other way. So I calculate the revenue density of each product, and then I dollar cost average those numbers based on the sales velocity of each SKU.
Okay.
I don't know if that's the same. You'd have to ask my high school math teacher whether it would come out with the same answer or not.
Yeah, I'd have to ask my wife on that one too. I'm good at math. She's great at math. Okay.
So what you're getting at is, yes, we have a scorecard. So we don't expect every business we look at to score at the top of the scorecard on all of these different metrics, but it helps us get an idea internally of, is this a great business for us? Or is this a good business for us, or is this something we're not interested in?
Got it.
It kind of keeps us intellectually honest.
Okay. Any more big red flags?
Obviously, if you have declining revenue, or if you're extremely focused on wholesale, like if you're 98% wholesale retail, that would be pretty scary for us. Although we bought businesses with declining revenue because we thought that there was opportunity there and we could fix them. We've bought businesses with a lot of wholesale revenue because we thought there's opportunity to take them online. So, none of these things are deal breakers, but these are things you kind of add up points in the yes column and points in the no column.
Yeah, there's not only a science, but there's an art here as well, I'm getting.
Yep.
Okay. So if you have a business that goes check, 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 check on your scorecard, the question that pops into my mind is, why on earth, because it's a great business, that's why you're interested, why on earth would anybody want to sell that thing?
Sometimes I ask myself that question every day, but no, there's plenty of reasons you want to sell your business. I mean, chief among them, honestly, that we run into all the time is just burnout. A lot of times people have been doing it for 10 years. I mean, some of the best businesses, the businesses that we like the best, have been around for 10 plus years. And that's another thing. We won't buy a business that's been around for less than 5 years. Okay. We like to see a proven track record. So if you've been doing something for 5-10 years, and you're an entrepreneurial type person, like probably many of your listeners, you might be ready to go on to the next thing. It might be not indicative that the thing you're currently doing is not cool or has lots of opportunity, but you just might be ready to move on. You might be burned out. We've seen people who just had a kid. We've seen people who had a sick parent. A lot of times life gets in the way too. Yeah. So there's plenty of reasons to sell. And honestly, those are kind of the situations we love, because those are good businesses that people are selling for a personal reason, versus somebody who kind of thinks they squeeze all the juice out of the business and is trying to unload it at the top. And we're definitely looking for that too. The question of why are you selling is a critical one to us.
Yeah, it seems to me there's always opportunity with a fresh set of eyes.
Yes, always.
Okay, so we're going to take a quick moment to bring you a message from our sponsor for this episode. The sponsor of this episode is a new software tool called Sellerly, brought to you by a company that's been around for a very long time called SEMrush. So Sellerly is a new tool that they've brought, and it's free, and they brought it to the market to help Amazon, or to help brands or Amazon sellers to split test what is working most effectively on Amazon. So you want to figure out which of two titles is working the best. You want to figure out which images are working the best. You want to figure out which version of your bullet points is working the best. And you want to figure out which version of your description is working the best. Sellerly is able to help you to test all the main elements of a product detail page. And as a seller using the tool, you can run an unlimited number of tests. And as I mentioned, it's free, so it's not too terribly expensive. Each test lasts for 7 days, but can be discarded at any time if it's showing bad results. And all of this, of course, is to help you make more data-driven decisions about what you should be doing with each and every product listing that you're testing. If you'd like to give this a try, I would encourage you to head on over to brightideas.co/Sellerly, and that's Sellerly. Again, brightideas.co/Sellerly. All right, so as we've been talking through, couple of things came to mind. So you mentioned why people sell: burnout, had a sick kid, had a life event. Maybe they're looking for some liquidity because they feel their net worth is too concentrated in one particular asset. But you did say something about you look to uncover somebody who's quote unquote selling at the top. Are there any particular strategies you have to help you identify when the seller isn't burned out or isn't having a life event and they just know something that you don't know, and you've got to try and figure out what that is?
Yeah, so that's called due diligence, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Our filter for having been in existence more than 5 years does solve for a lot of this, because we see a ton of businesses. There seems to be somebody out there is telling people, start an Amazon business, wait exactly 2 years, and then list it for sale and sell it before it all goes sideways.
Mm-hmm.
There are a ton of Amazon businesses for sale that are exactly 2 years old. I have not done all the data analysis, but I know that there are kind of serial sellers out there that will stand these things up, work on them for 2 years, and then try to flip them. And that's not a bag I'm interested in holding. So we it's more about trying to figure out, does the seller have a plausible, legitimate reason for selling now? And I will kind of keep digging until I can figure out what that underlying motivation really is. And until I can understand that, I'm probably going to not be interested in buying the company. So a big part of our diligence is really trying to get to know the seller well enough so I can understand what is really driving the sale process. Why sell and why now?
How long on average do you think your due diligence process takes?
We have always closed in under 60 days.
Okay.
So typically from the time we have a signed LOI, we'll typically have exclusivity for about 60 days. Sometimes we close earlier than that, but 60 is our target. Sometimes sellers will kind of say, I need another 30 days, but we are kind of always ready to close, provided the seller gives us all the information that we've asked for, sort of in a timely fashion. But 60 days is always that target.
And during that 60 days, to uncover that reason for sale, you're kind of coming at it repeatedly from all different angles with all different variations of the questions to, in essence, try and trip them up if they're not telling you the truth.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily like a 60-day game of gotcha. It's a little bit more like a 60-day game of trying to get in their head to understand where they're coming from, and try to get them so I can understand their frame of mind. And then you're also trying to turn over all the other rocks in their business and say, like, oh, well, I just talked to your major supplier and now I see that they're cutting you off in 6 months. Like, talk to me about that. Might not be the reason that you're interested in selling your business right now.
Yeah.
So you're looking for things like that, but really you're just trying to get in their head to make sure that you're not going to be catching a falling knife.
When you're going through due diligence, is a part of your process to have a dinner with them face to face?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I spend as much face to face time as possible. I would never buy a business without spending time with the founder. I insist that we have dinner together and a couple of glasses of wine if they do drink. And I try to get to know them on a personal level.
And then once you decide you're going to close, how long do you want that founder to hang around for typically?
So I've learned that maybe we are different than most, but we typically don't ask very much from the founder after close. It's, a couple week transition period tops. Okay. We usually get about a month, but we find, we say you got to help us 40 hours a week for a month, but we find after the first 2 weeks, we're just not even calling them. And then we ask for like up to 5 hours a week for like 3 to 6 months after, which basically just means please answer my phone call if I call you. Yeah. But we never call. We find that we just never do. We have a whole team here that is kind of focused on running an integration and getting it really buttoned up process-wise and onto our platform as fast as possible. So the founder, pretty quickly just takes on a role of, hey, I heard from this customer that hasn't ordered in 2 years. We hadn't ever talked about it. Give me a little background on them. Yeah. That type of thing, not really actually doing anything.
Okay. So now that you have a portfolio of, I think you said 6 brands, is that right?
Yep.
Okay.
Well, so we've done 6 acquisitions. We have 10 brands total.
Yeah, 10 brands. Okay. What are what are the top 2 or 3 biggest challenges in your job in running a company that has a portfolio of brands?
Yeah. So we're, so as I said, 10 brands. The multi-brand problem is real. When you have just one brand, you kind of spend all day thinking about the products, the customers, the industry. You're really, really steeped in it. But when you have 10 brands, you have to be, kind of horribly schizophrenic, right? You got to put yourself, you got to switch personas, very often during the day. And so we've started to cluster our brands so our employees have to switch less often. But there is sort of the switching cost. Every time you change personas, you lose a little bit of efficiency. So we are hyper aware that this is sort of a pitfall and spend a lot of time trying to figure out how to make sure we stay in touch with each individual customer. And also that we then roll out best practices. If we figure out a funnel that's working on brand A, let's make sure that we do roll it out in brand B and brand C and brand D. Which sounds basic, but it's hard to organize all of that and make sure that actually happens.
Yeah.
So that's a challenge for sure. And then just reporting was a real challenge for us too, because all of the kind of your standard accounting packages, QuickBooks, Xero, et cetera, are not really set up to handle 10 Shopify stores and, plus Amazon, plus wholesale. And to then break that all down so I can say, show me a P&L statement for brand C and brand A. So in 2018, we launched on an ERP called Netsuite. Which
I was just going to say, I'll bet you use Netsuite, don't you?
Yeah, really transformative for us.
Yeah, and I'll bet that was no small project implementing that thing.
It was not. It took us almost 9 months. We just, actually yesterday was our 1-year anniversary of Netsuite, and we all celebrated here because now I have full year-over-year everything in Netsuite as of July 1st. So that was a big project, but we couldn't run the business without it. So we can say, Netsuite, show me brand B on Amazon. Show me brand B on Shopify. Show me brand B wholesale. And so you can see how your different channels are doing from a margin perspective. And, show me how much inventory we've had. What's our return on that inventory? Automatically raise for me alarms for SKUs that are dropping below 12 weeks of cover. When you have 10 brands and you have all these products, and I'm sure you probably run into it in your business. Also, when you've got all this stuff in inventory, just making sure you don't run out becomes non-trivial.
Yeah, it's a huge issue because every time you run out, it's literally like losing money because you have been making sales.
Right, exactly.
All right, so and I had a great question in my head and now it just escaped me because it wasn't part of our pre-interview. Let me see if I can remember it. It'll come back to me. So when here it is. Scaling your business. So you've used a particular strategy, buying brands of a certain-ish size to get you to where you're at. I assume then to get to $100 million or $200 million in annual revenue, the average size of your brands is going to have to go up, because otherwise you're going to end up with way too many of them, and you've got costs of due diligence, and your ROI doesn't become high enough because buying a $5 million company requires probably as much due diligence as buying a $25 million company.
Yes, although I would divide your numbers by 5. So when we started, we were looking at brands that were under $1 million in sales. And now we're looking at brands that are 1 to 10 million in sales. For all of the reasons you articulated, in that it's not that much harder to operate a larger brand than it is a smaller brand. But there is a ceiling on brand size where, when you're at 20, 30 million in sales, I'll be bidding against Procter & Gamble.
Mm-hmm. And they're going to pay more than you.
Sorry, that was me. I thought I was on silent. So above a certain size, you're bidding against Procter & Gamble or whoever else, right? And they're going to pay more. So the price is going to go up. So our thesis is, how do we own 20, 30, 40 brands, in a way that works? How do we build the process to do that? So we can buy brands that are 1 to 10 million in sales. And to do that 50 times.
Mm-hmm. Just so that you're not having to compete against P&G. Because
Yes.
you're never going to win that bidding war.
Yeah, you can't outbid P&G.
No. Okay. So here's what we're going to talk about before we finish up. I want to ask you about tools and resources and strategies to cope with some of the biggest challenges. And I think those are probably somewhere along the line of finding and managing talent and and estimating how much complexity you can take out when you buy a new brand. Those are a couple of things we covered in the pre-interview. And then something I wanted to add to that is, and this was as a result of an interview I did just recently, I think in maybe episode 274, I interviewed the founder of a company called Wicked Reports, and we talked a lot about attributed revenue. Do you happen to use Wicked Reports, by the way?
No, not familiar with it.
Oh, okay.
I'll Google it.
Do you feel, well, let's hang out on this attributed revenue thing for just a moment, because it was actually quite a fascinating interview. So we as marketers, and I'm looking for your feedback, so let me give you a quick scenario. We as marketers, we design our funnels. We think, okay, I'm going to run this ad. Someone's going to click this ad. They're going to go to a lander. They're going to see my offer, and some portion of the people are going to buy my offer, and some portion of the people aren't going to buy my offer, and that's kind of the end of it. But that is, in reality, funnels don't really work that way, because people do all sorts of crazy weird things while they're in the middle of your funnel that you didn't necessarily anticipate. So for example, I see this ad, I click this ad, and then I add it to cart, but maybe a week or two goes by because I'm going to be buying it for somebody's birthday. And then, like a whole big amount of time goes by before I buy it. Or maybe I don't buy, but then months and months later, because I've been consuming your content, maybe I buy it down the road. And so attributed revenue is figuring out, well, maybe I had a funnel an ad campaign that I was running for a 30-day period. And I stopped doing it after 30 days because it didn't look like it was having great ROI. But now 60 days later, all those people are buying my stuff like crazy, but you wouldn't know that unless you had a really good attribution model in place. How do you deal with that challenge?
Is that not the central challenge of e-commerce, essentially,
Yeah.
right? Is attribution. I know Facebook and Google themselves spend a ton of time and money trying to figure that out, as do much larger e-commerce retailers than us. But yeah, so one way this hits home for us is sort of the .com to Amazon. We call it the channel switching problem.
Mm-hmm.
So it is very common that people will see our Facebook ads, click them, come to our site, browse around, become convinced to buy our thing, but they want it Prime, right? So they open up a new tab, they open up Amazon.com, they type in our product name, click and convert on Amazon.
Yeah.
No way to attribute that at all. So we're aware it's happening because when I turn off my Facebook ads, my Amazon sales decline.
Yeah.
And even though I'm not sending any Facebook traffic to Amazon, I'm just sending Facebook traffic to my site. I also know that on Amazon, on some of my listings where I run really good funnels, I have conversion rates that are 80, 90, sometimes I've seen 120% conversion rate, which doesn't even make sense to me on Amazon. So I know that's traffic, that is so high intent that they have been convinced elsewhere and they're just using Amazon as a delivery mechanism. So we're working now on kind of some correlation between, we're turning Facebook on and off and watching how Amazon moves for a couple of our different SKUs and trying to come up with a correlation, which then you could apply sort of let's say, you get an extra 30 cents of Amazon revenue for every dollar of .com revenue that you can't measure. Now you multiply all of your revenues when you're trying to do your ROAS by 1.3, and it might change whether you turn a campaign off or not.
Yeah. Okay. Well, without turning this into a Wicked Reports ad, it was a very interesting interview for me because this is something that I've been working on in my own business. And for whatever it's worth, I would suggest maybe when you're driving, have a listen and see if there's anything there that sparks your interest.
Cool. I will.
And that is episode, just so that everyone's clear, episode 274. So breadideas.co/274. Okay. So challenges, we talked about in our pre-interview, finding and managing talent. So we could probably do a whole interview about that, but we won't. Let's talk about maybe your one or two best strategies for finding and managing talent.
Yeah. So this is kind of the talent thing is something, the biggest thing I didn't see coming in building the business. We're now almost 40 employees, and I thought I was starting an e-commerce company, but actually I was starting a company which is made up of people that happens to do e-commerce. And as we get bigger and bigger, and I'm sure this will just continue, it becomes so much more about having the right butts in the right seats and empowering them or letting them know what the goals are, and then empowering them to reach those goals. And basically getting out of their way myself, and then also getting other things out of their way so they can actually hit the goals I set for them. So we spent a lot of time on goals. Actually, we use a system called SMART for goal setting, which I did not invent the system. If you Google SMART goals, you will learn about it. But SMART stands for specific, is the S, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. Specific means not, make revenue go up. Make revenue go up by 20%, right? Specific. Measurable, like revenue is a measurable goal, so that's a good one. But happiness is not. So make customer happiness go up. That's not very measurable. Achievable.
Well, if you were using the Net Promoter Score, you could kind of measure it.
Yes, because then you would say make the customer happiness score go up.
Yeah.
You have to be able to measure it. Achievable, obviously, that means don't set demoralizingly high goals and then never pay anybody bonuses because they never got to any of your ridiculous goals. Relevant is really important, and I think this is where a lot of people fall down in goal setting. Relevant means it has to be within the sphere of control of the employee who is in charge of achieving the goal. So, if I set a goal in my shipping department for revenue to go up 20% this year, that's going to be a pretty demoralizing goal for them because they have no impact on that at all, right? What they have an impact on is cost per package. So you want to set goals that people can affect, because if they can't affect the goal, that leads them to checking out pretty quick and basically, I hope marketing hits their numbers and we get our bonuses, right? And then the T is time bound, which means you got to have an end date where you either succeeded or failed at the goal.
Have you ever heard of The Great Game of Business by Jack Stack?
I have. Someone else recommended that to me like a week or two ago.
So do you know his story of SRC and International Harvester and how the whole thing?
No.
I will very quickly encapsulate it for you, but I would encourage you and everyone else to check it out because it's extremely compelling. So back in, I think it was 1983, in Springfield, Missouri, Jack Stack and the management team were running International Harvester. They were running Springfield Remanufacturing, I think, which was owned by International Harvester. And anyway, Harvester was going towards Chapter 11. And so when that happened, Jack and his, I don't remember how many employees, but we'll call it 100-ish employees who were rebuilding diesel engines. They were going to all lose their jobs. In 1983 and in Springfield, that was not a desirable outcome, obviously, because there wasn't any other jobs. So Jack and his management team over a period of time figured out how to buy their company from International Harvester, and they took it on with a 90-to-1 debt to equity ratio. $9 million, and they put down $100,000, I think is what it was. So their runway was incredibly short, and the vast majority of their people were blue collar folks, grease on their hands, working out on the factory floor, and they had to figure out how to get everybody aligned really quickly. And that was how and why the Great Game of Business was born. And it is a combination of open book management and sharing a critical number, and what you said, relevant, making sure that each and every person in each and every department understands how what they do or don't do affects the company's ability to achieve its profit goals. And then they feel like, well, okay, now I understand the rules of the game. Now I got to be able to feel like I can win the game, which is with the whole bonus structure and so forth and so on. So I think you would probably find it fairly fascinating. There's others since Jack's created that. I mean, he was the first. There's EOS, the Entrepreneur's Operating System. There's all sorts of other guys who've come out with management tools for this, and maybe you're using some of that already.
The takeaway from the book that the person who recommended it to me said was very powerful for them and has been very powerful for us because we sort of were doing it without knowing, is he said, he equates it back to sports. And one of the things that makes sports fun is that you can win and that you know the score. Mm-hmm. If you're playing pickup basketball and someone goes, let's not keep score, right? The game gets a lot less fun immediately.
Yeah.
You want to keep score, and there's a scoreboard, so you can look up at the scoreboard and know if you're winning or losing at any one time and how your actions are impacting the score. And that actually happens very rarely in business. We don't go out of the way to tell our employees the score, whatever the metrics are, the metrics, the points, however we measure our success. It can be very easy to either, hoard those metrics just for management or not communicate them to the employees in enough of a real time. So we have been pushing to get these metrics on TVs on the wall in real time. Mm-hmm. And then we also have weekly reviews of the past week. So the employees know the score, which sounds so basic, but it really hadn't hit me how critical it is to know the score.
Absolutely. Especially when you go through periods of adversity, because here's the thing. If you don't tell employees how much money your company is making, they will assume it is vastly more than it is, and they will consider you to be the greediest bastard on the face of the earth because you're not paying them more.
Yep.
And transparency solves that problem, because then they become educated about how business works, and they realize, wow, this is actually a lot harder to make a profit than I would have thought. And Bill's not just taking $5 million a year and buying himself new boats and cars and going on vacations and doing all these things. That greedy bastard, why doesn't he pay me more?
Right. Yeah. A lot of people think revenue is profit.
Oh, yeah.
Most, I would think.
Yes.
If you're not trained in accounting.
Yes. We actually have huge whiteboards on our walls with our P&L and our balance sheet. And so we go through them line by line and educate the people that work for us on what it all means and how their behavior can influence those things to the company's benefit, which will ultimately be to their benefit as well. And I'll tell you, it's not easy to do all this stuff, but it's better than not doing it.
Right. It's a lot of work.
It is
a lot of work. Yeah. Setting goals. We take 2 weeks just to set goals.
Yeah.
Like my time.
Yeah.
Almost entirely, but it's worth it.
All right. We are rolling up on finishing. So I want to ask you, we've got more questions than we will have time for. Let's talk about the desk drawer that was full of bills.
Yes.
as one of your due diligence mistakes and lesson learned.
Yeah. So I mentioned this in the pre-interview when Trent asked me sort of what are some funny stories, things that you've had to add to your due diligence list as the years have gone on. And in one instance, we bought this company and we said, you need to tell us all the money you owe to your vendors, your accounts payable, right? And they told us, they gave us a list. We spent a lot of time going through that list, understanding it, vetting it, et cetera. We bought the business. And then we went to place, all the accounts payable got paid off. We made sure it got paid off. But then we went to place another order with a vendor, and they said, oh, well, you guys haven't paid us. You still owe us all this money. And we disputed it because we didn't understand. And then about a week later, we found an old desk. We were selling some furniture, and we were going through the drawers of this desk, and their old accountant had a literal desk drawer full of bills that she had never inputted into the system, into the accounting system. And as such had never been disclosed to us. Now, technically these bills were the responsibility of the prior owner, but our manufacturer didn't care. They were like, that's between you and them, pay us or we're not making any more widgets. So we ended up eating about $30,000 as a result of that, kind of our failure to uncover that during diligence. We ultimately elected not to go after the seller for, goodwill reasons, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
But what we did add to our list is, instead of asking the seller how much money they owe their vendors, we ask their vendors how much money the seller owes them. So we asked the seller to get a statement of account from all their vendors. So they get the vendors to say, we actually think you owe us this much, and then provide that to us. And that validates it, because ultimately the vendor owns you, right? You can't sell products you don't get. And regardless of whose responsibility it actually is, you're paying them.
That's a $30,000 tuition right there.
That's right.
Tuition
right.
to masterclass.
Yep.
All right. Last question. You said at the very beginning of this interview that your goal is to build this portfolio of e-commerce brands and own them forever. And as we are all very well aware, we live in a world where e-commerce is changing a lot all of the time. One of the big changes that was announced in the news maybe 2 weeks ago, maybe a week ago, Shopify saying, hey, we're going to spend $1 billion building fulfillment centers so that we can provide 2-day shipping as well, although Amazon is working their way down to 1-day shipping. But so that's just an example, and I'm interested in your take on that. But the second part to my question is how the hell do you have confidence to know that as you're building your portfolio of brands, that the great big dump truck coming down the road that you can't see isn't going to absolutely just annihilate you? Because, again, change is such a constant in our business. So 2-part question.
Yeah. I mean, so the only constant is change. I totally agree. But there are a few things. Jeff Bezos always says that everybody is so concerned with what's going to change that they never stop to think about what's not going to change. And these principles that I believe are not going to change are also, Bezos shares a lot of these as well, which is that I do not believe people are going to stop wanting to buy things on the internet. I also believe that consumers are going to want more and more personalized and niche brands and products that fit their wants, needs, and desires exactly. We are moving from a world of fewer, larger brands that were dominated by the old line CPG companies like Procter & Gamble, S.C. Johnson, et cetera, who made one type of laundry detergent that every housewife in America used, right? And it smelled one way. There was one type of Tide, right? We're moving to a world where people want different types of detergents for different types of clothes in different scents, in different sizes, delivered in exactly when they want it, right? And that same thing is playing out in every CPG category across the board. I mean, everything from laundry detergent to beer. I mean, we were all drinking Bud Light 10 years ago and happy about it.
Beer. Yeah.
Yeah. And think about now everybody wants like the local double hopped, barrel aged microbrew, right?
Yeah.
People go somewhere and when they ask the waiter, what's from here, right?
Yeah.
People want micro brands now. And that is a sea change that I don't think is going anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're convinced like I am that people always want to buy things online, if you're convinced in the fact that people are going to want more narrowly targeted brands, and if you're convinced that I am, that people want brands. People like brands. There's been I think the death of the brand has been greatly exaggerated. There's been a lot of hullabaloo on the internet that people won't care what brand it is and they will just buy, whatever has 4.8 stars on Amazon.
There's premium socks on Amazon for $15. Why are they in business? Because they make a quality product that people perceive to be so much better. And I actually bought a pair of their socks and man, are they comfy. And I'm not going to go and buy a whole bunch more pairs of $15 socks, but some people who are maybe really, really into socks would be very happy to have an extensive sock collection because they're like a sock person.
Yeah, there is value in brand.
Yeah. And the other thing too, I think that supports your argument is that Amazon kind of sucks at, I wouldn't say customer service, but providing an engaging shopping experience. Like, it's add to cart, click checkout, and you get it fast. So Amazon's really good at that. But in terms of personalization and so forth, and you can probably answer this question better than me, I don't really think they do a great job at that.
Yeah. So the word for that would be customer experience.
Yeah,
I heard a quote that Amazon has spent decades absolutely perfecting buying. They are incredible at buying, but they are still terrible at shopping on the front end, right? Yeah. They're very good. Like, if you know what you want narrowly, like, you can get it, like, they'll mail it to you before you even click add to cart practically, right? They will read your mind and it'll be at your front door. They're great at buying, but they're still terrible at shopping.
Okay. So let's close out on the Shopify portion of my question. And I think you and I, when we were doing our pre-interview, you were talking about that you expected that something like that to come pretty soon. And lo and behold, I don't know, whether you have a crystal ball or an inside, 2 cans and a string, within a week or two of you and I having that discussion, they come out and they say, we're going to spend $1 billion. Were you doing the happy dance in your office when you heard that? Or how big of a deal is that?
I would love to have insider information, but sadly it is just a crystal ball. I think, I just think it's been so obvious that what Shopify wants to do is they want to be the toolkit for an independent brand to reach their customer and run an entire business. And they want to be the anti-Amazon, right? And if you're an independent business, the first biggest friction was doing an online store, right? Accepting money, cart, all that stuff was a really big friction. And Shopify has, I don't want to say they've solved it, but they've made huge strides. But the next biggest thing is fulfillment, right? I mean, that is like, you can take the order, but now what? And everybody's dealing with 3PLs, and Amazon's FBA is such a competitive weapon. I mean, just look at all of the how to start a business courses out there. All of them say start with FBA, right? Because it's easier, right? You don't even have to worry about it. You get sort of this cart, payment processing, fulfillment, all in one magic wand situation, right? It's great. And so Shopify knew that it was easier to start a business on Amazon than it was on Shopify. And I think that's where this push into fulfillment is coming from. I think it's exactly right. This is the other big hole, for merchants, that if you're trying to start a business, you got to take orders, you got to ship them. And now Shopify is going to do both.
At this point in time, do you do your own fulfillment?
We do.
And do you think that you will be able to stop doing that when Shopify has their network of fulfillment centers built out? I
think our business is a little different. We're bigger than most, I think, and more complex. We have 10 brands. I think who Shopify is targeting with this is sort of the newer or the smaller business who wants it all kind of wrapped up in a little bow. Yeah. We have worked with 3PLs before and had a bad experience. I don't necessarily think that the Shopify 3PL experience will be better than the other 3PL experience, and the FBA experience is not great either as a business user of FBA, right? So 3PLs have their flaws, and I don't think Shopify has some magic wand that will solve all the flaws of the 3PL model. But what they will be able to solve is tightly integrating it with Shopify. So it makes it much easier to start a business. For smaller businesses, kind of subscale businesses, I think it'll be amazing. It'll help Shopify compete with Amazon as a place to start a business.
And then there'll be more brands for you to buy.
Hopefully. That's the idea.
All right, Bill, thank you so much for coming and having what was an incredibly enjoyable conversation for me, and I hope for the audience as well. If there's anyone out there who has a brand that they want to sell and they want to talk to you, what would be the simplest way for them to be able to get in touch?
Yeah, the best way to get in touch, if you would like to explore selling us your business or just learn a little bit more about what that process would be like, is to go to elementsbrands.com. And that's both plural, Elements Brands. And then there's a connect menu in the top right. And there's a form on there that you can fill out. You don't have to disclose any proprietary information, just your contact information and what type of business you're in. And we can start a conversation.
All right. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Sure thing. Thanks for having me, Trent.